what exactly is the strategy here? Because a lot of people were really taken by surprise.
Yeah, Fran, so you'll remember that the CHIPS Act and Science Act was signed in 2022, and it allocated $52 billion in terms of grants and subsidies to chip companies, semiconductor companies, to boost their investments and build out things like foundries in the U.S. The Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick looking basically to squeeze more juice from the orange, looking to withhold some of these subsidies to compel those companies, whether it's Intel or Samsung or Micron and others, to ramp up their investments in the U.S. without additional grants. So there's a stick approach, which is withholding some of these subsidies, and also, of course, President Trump's own threat of tariffs on the semiconductor industry. That's the stick. On the carrot front, we are hearing from our reporting that Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, is also open to considering increasing and pushing out a credit, a tax credit of 25% for these companies that actually has proven to be more valuable than the subsidies themselves. So that is the reporting in terms of how they're looking to adjust this. Some of these companies have already, of course, pledged to spend, and a part of this seems to be down to, as well, trying to build a template on what TSMC have done, of course, the owner and operator of the biggest foundries over in Taiwan, who recently committed to an additional $100 billion of investments in plants in Arizona. And that seems to be part of a template that the Commerce Secretary is looking to use as he wants to drive up, of course, the investment numbers and the dollar numbers that he can then hand over to President Trump and they can claim as a win.
So could a more hardline approach, by the U.S. to subsidies actually boost China's standing in the chip race?
Well, as you were just discussing with your previous guest there, Fran, it's a question of certainty or uncertainty and predictability. The CHIPS Act was a bipartisan piece of legislation signed in 2022 with the backing of both Democrats and Republicans, and now you have a new administration trying to rework that piece of policy. So there's the uncertainty that in some quarters will be a reminder of the unpredictability and the risks around investment. You do not have that 10-year horizon, arguably, that you once had with that CHIPS Act. Some of these companies were on the line already to receive subsidies of about $1 billion, including the likes of Intel, Micron and Global Foundries. Some of those companies have not received the funding that they'd had agreements with the previous administration to receive. That funds haven't come through. Other companies are still waiting to have the talks and discussions with the Commerce Secretary. So that uncertainty is a potential risk. These companies, by the way, have already committed to investing about $400 billion in the U.S. market as a result of the CHIPS Act. So there is potentially a question as to whether or not that commitment now starts to be put into question.